Okay, so you should be able to see coding errors and mismatches. That's our next topic we're highlighting. So the issues that we come across is, or you come across, I should say, common errors, upcoding, downcoding, wrong modifiers. I know I'm telling you all things that you already know, right? Mismatch diagnosis, procedure codes. You're probably getting a headache just hearing this. Claim denials, audit risk, reduces provider revenue, increases rework. So there's so many details that you have to stay on top of. It can be a lot. So if you're able to use some of these tools we're going to mention to you, hopefully it just eases the burden of just coming across those procedure code issues or diagnosis code issues later on, and hopefully try to catch that sooner if you're coming across something that you need to modify or you need to update inside of those transactions that are being sent out. So some of the solutions that are available, obviously, you regular training, coder training, continuing education too. That's always a plus, right? But what are some of the things that you can do inside of Medisoft? There's a very helpful tool called transaction alerts. It does take a little bit of time, just full transparency, kind of setting up the codes, kind of customizing it with the information that you want. But if you're noticing that, well, why are we constantly missing putting an extra modifier with this procedure code? And you're noticing some trends in your office that are constantly happening. These transaction alerts can try to capture that as you're entering in your billing. So that's where this is a huge benefit to be able to try to show you and give you an alert when you're putting in those procedures. Also, there's a service called claim scrubbing and advanced claim scrubbing. The clearinghouse is going to do some of that scrubbing. It's going to try to capture some of those things. You've probably seen that if you're using emedics, if it's giving you errors about, you know, policy number is not in the right format or the diagnosis code might be invalid. This takes it up another layer of edits to check based on the different insurance carriers that you're sending out claims to. And this is beneficial for the offices that are you're using a large number of procedure codes. It may not be as helpful if you only have just a few codes that you use. It's probably not going to give you a lot of new information that you don't already know. But if you're sending lots of codes out, different variety of codes, this is checking against each insurance carrier that you're sending out claims to, and it's checking against some of their requirements, some of their edits, their specific edits. It's kind of like, I think, Eric, you mentioned that earlier. I like that example of like having an extra biller with you. So if you're not using
Yeah.
like the revenue cycle management service, this is almost like like a way of doing that, where it's kind of like a biller. It's doing a little bit of extra work for you behind the scenes, and that's the claim scrubbing service. So it'll send out when you send out your claims, it's automatically going to do that for every single claim that you send out. So let's show you the transaction alerts. This is a really cool feature. I like, and I think as of maybe a couple versions ago, they added this to Medisoft. So let's use an example so you can see it real time how this works with transaction alerts. In your Medisoft, if you go to the list menu and you go all the way down to transaction entry alerts, I created one on here already, so this is probably going to be blank on your screen. You're just going to go to new, and when you click on new, I'm going to open up the one that I created. I just put an example on here. So you have all these filters that you can select to say, if you're using this insurance, if you're using this procedure code, then give me this alert. Give me a pop-up message. That's in essence what's happening. So in the example I put on here is I'm telling Medisoft, whenever I have a patient that has Medicare as the insurance, and whenever I'm using this code 99213, I want it to give me this message. Remember to add additional modifier AB. So you're customizing this however way you want in your office. This is just a very simple example. I mean, you can really go further out, putting in if there's a certain modifier being used, a certain diagnosis code, however way you want to customize it using this filters here. Then what happens when you save this, I'm going to pull up a patient that has Medicare. Or in our demo database. So he's already got other types of alerts, but these aren't the alerts I'm talking about. I'm going to show you here in just a second. So when you go and you create a new procedure, so let's say your biller is going in beginning of the day, they've got their super bill, they're plugging in their code. So they're going in, putting a new charge, they're starting to type in 99213. They're tabbing over, everything looks good to them. The moment they click on save transactions, there's our alert. It's saying, hey, remember to add additional modifier AB, and that's your warning message that's popping up. And so you've got these other buttons here. It's almost like, are you sure? Do you want to continue? So they're like, oh, I forgot to do that. Then you can just say, wait, no, I don't want to save it just yet. No. And then go in there, make your correction. The system will capture that when you make that correction because it knows to look for that. So you can put requirements on there. So if you save it, you can still say yes to continue to save it because they've made those changes, those corrections, and then it'll allow them to continue. So that's just a very basic example. Those transaction alerts, if you notice your staff or ones, they're continuing to send out statement or send out claims without some information that's critical in how you get paid, then we want you to use those transactional alerts. That's going to save you so much time and headaches later on. If something gets missed and the insurance later on is the one that tells you. So that's transaction alerts. The claim scrubbing service, we don't have samples on that to show you on this screen, but the way it works is if you have emedics, you probably noticed the way it gives you certain types of rejections from the clearinghouse. Like I was talking about, like invalid diagnosis code, um, provider, city, state, whatever is missing. This is now checking more advanced edits with the types of diagnosis codes that you're sending out. It's more current with those requirements because you know how every year sometimes the insurance carriers will update some of those diagnosis codes or maybe some are now inactive. This is basically real time. It's checking against those edits that the insurance carriers have, and it's just scrubbing it in addition to like those regular scrubs that it's doing. So that's an extra service, but it's one that, if you're able to take advantage of that, especially with the amount of codes you might be sending, that could be useful in capturing some of that.